Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/PettyRevenge. In today's episode, caused my food stealing roommate to make his mom cry. Neighbor's kids woke me up with their screaming, so I came up with a not so mature revenge. I got my dirty roommate fired. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Caused my food stealing roommate to make his mom cry. So this happened way back in 2013. I was living in a large space with 5 roommates. One of my roommates was known for borrowing food, including expensive stuff like meat, but never replacing it. Well, one day I knew his mother was coming to visit and stay a few days, and his mom absolutely loved horses, so what I decided to do was bait this roommate with horse meat. It's not common in the US, but legal to buy imported, so I acquired some nice thin cuts and I sliced most of it and salted and left in a Tupperware by the fridge while I went at the rest of the package with the horse meat store label in the freezer. Well, sure enough, in the evening I noticed some of the horses gone, so I make a big deal about someone stealing some of my horse meat in front of his mom. They go, haha. Very funny. Sure, it's horse meat. And my roommate owns up to borrowing some meat he used to make him and his mom steak and eggs for breakfast and lies that he'll replace it. That's when I pull out the package from the freezer and prove it was in fact horse meat, and his mom burst into tears, crying to her son, "How could you feed me horse?" He definitely at least stopped borrowing my meat after that. NGL, that's a sentence I never thought I'd read in my life. Excellent and appropriately executed revenge. Horse meat is actually perfectly safe to eat, fairly nutritious, lean, and tastes fine when prepared correctly, about halfway between beef and venison in flavor, so it's entirely the roommate's own fault for taking what isn't theirs. I genuinely like horse meat. I've since moved to Germany and I frequently get horse meat pizza from my neighborhood pizza joint. There is a part of Japan where raw horse meat, basashi, is a big delicacy. It's actually really nice, but for many Westerners like myself, it requires a little mental gymnastics to accept. I'm not sure the word borrowing means what you think it does. I think you meant stealing. Stealing is when someone takes something of yours without permission and doesn't give it back, which is exactly what your roommate was doing. Neighbor's kids woke me up with their screaming, so I came up with a not so mature revenge. So, it was Sunday. I came back from a party at Saturday, being extremely tired. And those kids go in the garden and scream around at 8 a.m. I got myself a coin, €2, and glued it directly in front of the slide in the garden, so they had to see it. The next 2 hours they tried to get the money, unsuccessful. Their desperate screaming and crying was music to my ears. Did they get the money? No. They went inside to get their parents and I got the coin, got a little knife to get it, and put it back in my pocket. I wasn't proud of myself, but this shit was hilarious AF. Sure, they're still screaming in the morning, but I got what I wanted. Their petty revenge will be letting the kids out at 7 a.m. Those kids have been up since 5, 8 was the parents holding back. I would record their screaming, then play it back to the parents when the kids have finally gone to bed and all is quiet in their house. I did something similar years ago. Our neighbors were very abusive to their young child and used to scream at the poor kid all the time. Our houses were close, so it was very loud. Got out my old tape recorder, taped several minutes of screaming, rewound it, and played it back at full volume. It shut them up for a short time. Back to their normal awful selves the next day. Kids playing outside at 8 a.m. on a Sunday morning. How dare they? There's a difference between kids playing and banshees screeching with no parental control. I worked graveyard for many years. The last thing I would want to do is to stop children from playing, and my bedroom was right next to one of the common play areas. So I created a dark, quiet room in the center of my house just for sleeping while the rest of the world lived normal lives. If you don't have the availability, then I feel for you. Don't care if I get downvoted. 8 a.m. isn't that early for kids to be playing or for people to work in their gardens. You might have been tired from partying out the night before, but that's on you. Earplugs are inexpensive, many cost around a €2 coin. Dude, if they waited till 8 a.m. to have the kids outside, I don't understand the frustration. I got my dirty roommate fired. I, 30F, am from Country A, and a few years ago I was hired by a company in Country B. I had to move to Country B for a few months in order to be trained for the job, and then I could go back home to keep working remotely. I was hired more or less at the same time as a few other people from my country. As a result, the company had to find a suitable accommodation to put us in for several weeks, and so hotels were not an option. They found apartments for rent and put 2 employees from Country A in each apartment. I was the last employee from Country A to be hired, and as a result, I was accommodated in the only apartment that still had a free spot, with a roommate from my country who we will call Jeff, 32M. Cue to my first day in Country B. I was picked up at the train station after a long plane ride, and Jeff and others were kind enough to come get me to walk me to the apartment building we were all sharing. During the walk, Jeff kept telling me how long he had spent cleaning the apartment to make it ready for me, and I was thankful. However, when we got to the apartment, it was nasty, full of dirt, and what I want to assume were Jeff's beard hairs scattered around the place. The toilet was disgusting, the kitchen was sticky up to the ceiling, so I spent my first few days cleaning everything behind Jeff's back so as to not offend him. Some people's standards of cleanliness are different, so I thought nothing of it. Weeks passed and Jeff never cleaned again. He was incredibly messy, never cleaned after himself, walked in dirty mud boots all around the house, never did a single dish, never washed his bedsheets, barely showered, often forgot to flush the toilet after using it, never opened a single window to air the house, etc. I was absolutely disgusted and anxious the entire time I lived there, and I cleaned the house like a sick person each day to keep it livable for me. On our last night before returning to our home country, I packed my suitcases, washed all towels, linens, clothes, floors, surfaces, appliances. Everything. Jeff chose to get pissing drunk instead and not pack his suitcase or clean his room because he said it would take him 10 minutes the next morning. The next morning I got a knock on the door at approximately 9 a.m. It was our boss, coming to pick up Jeff because his flight was early in the morning. He was going to a different part of our country. Jeff was asleep in his dirty room, and I had to wake him up. He panicked, threw a few things in his suitcase, and ran for the door. Before he left, I asked if he intended on cleaning his bedroom as he promised, and he begged me to do it because I'm a better cleaner and he was too much in a rush. I called him a pig and he left. Cue my revenge. I had spent several weeks cleaning after him, not complaining to not come across as annoying, and just putting my head down and cleaning to make the house livable for me. I was so done and did not want to pick up any more hair or dirt coming from this man's body. So I called our boss. I explained the situation. The company had told us to leave the apartment spotless, otherwise they wouldn't get their deposits back. My boss came to the house to check Jeff's room and was appalled at what he saw. He profusely apologized to me, went to a supermarket, and bought new cleaning supplies. Even brought a Hoover from his own house. He spent the next few hours scrubbing the room on his hands and knees. He threw out the clothes and personal items Jeff had forgotten. And best of all, a few weeks after, and seeing Jeff's performance was completely subpar, he fired Jeff. If he hadn't been such a terrible human, he might have helped him get better at the job, but he chose to fire him instead. Long story short, Jeff ruined his own chances at a very good job, and I was thanked over and over again for putting up with the situation so gracefully. I also got a raise shortly after. So long story short, don't be a pig. It can have bigger consequences than expected. I call it karma. Everyone has their own idea of cleanliness, but the fact that he doesn't mind leaving bits of his body all over the place and repeatedly forgetting to flush the toilet tells me everything I need to know about his hygiene. And in the end, taking you for granted as if he was still doing you a favor by letting you clean, tells me that he has/had a mother who never taught him anything about cleanliness and respect for other people's space. Good for you that everything has been resolved. Imagine having to work with him. My beard is long, like at least 6 to 8 inches, and it drives me insane how much I seem to shed. It's baffling my body can lose as much hair as it does in maintaining semblance of length. If I go a week, I can see it on my vinyl floor like human dog hair clumps. I couldn't even imagine not noticing and cleaning that up. Jeff's new home, behind a dumpster, should meet his standards of hygiene. I can't believe you're dumpster shaming Jeff the pig. Some of the nicest people I've met lived in dumpsters. I could only ever afford a trash van myself, but I find that being bad at cleaning excuse so ridiculous. If you're really clueless, look at tips online. It's just plain lazy and disrespectful. I don't think this was petty revenge in the least. I think you're a saint for having put up with this and not complaining for so long, especially having to live with a man that you don't know. It might be enough to put you off of all men in the future, haha. I hope it doesn't. While I enjoyed your story, I have to disagree with your conclusion. You did not get Jeff fired. Jeff got Jeff fired. People who are bad at one aspect of life are also bad at many others. Jeff is just the latest example. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.